SPI, as in the substa, under its corresponding item, it is proposed that the matter be considered under the SPI item 11, entitled Report of the Adaptation Committee, with the same organization of work as agreed under substa. In addition, the CMA referred to the SPI the consideration of CMA sub-item 5A, entitled Reporting and Review pursuant to Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, provision of financial and technical support to developing countries, parties for reporting and capacity building. I will propose that this matter be considered under a new SPI item 24 with the same title as the CMA sub-item. The current item 24, Other Matters, and item 25, Closure, and the report on the session will be renumbered as the SPI items 25 and 26, respectively. May I invite parties to adopt the provisional agenda contained in FCCC SPI 2022-12 as orally amended with new agenda item 24 entitled Reporting and Review pursuant to Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, provision of financial and technical support to developing country parties for reporting and capacity building, and with sub-item 4A kept held in abeyance. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Thank you. I invite parties to turn to agenda item number 2, organizational matters, sub-item 2B, organization of the work of the session. Distinguished delegates, it is my intention to launch work on all items this afternoon, after which I will adjourn this meeting. Statements will be heard in a joint plenary of all bodies to be convened after this meeting. Closing of the SPI will take place on Saturday, 12th November. In order to ensure that conclusions are available in all UN languages for their adoption at the closing plenary meetings, it is essential that the content of all documents under the subsidiary bodies requiring translation be finalized by 6 p.m. on Friday, 11th November. Should consideration of an item not be completed by that time, it might be needed to be continued at SPI 58. As I indicated in my scenario note, we again have a comprehensive agenda for a very busy session. I urge parties to engage constructively in negotiation from their first meeting, capitalizing on progress where appropriate. I am working closely with the substa chair on the joint items on our agendas. We will apply strict time management measures to maximize negotiating time and to avoid as much as possible clashes of meetings on items with known substantive linkages. I encourage all negotiating groups to open meetings to observer organization unless very specific questions needed to be examined by parties only. I thank all groups for their support on this point. I will now launch work for the various items, and I will take up the items in order of the agenda, but I will start with joint items with substa so that they can swiftly launch work. May I take it that the SPI agrees to proceed on this basis? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to the joint items which are to be considered both by the substa and the SPI at this session, and for which I invite the SPI to agree to the same approach proposed and agreed under the substa. The joint items on the SPI agenda are the following. Agenda item 7, Matters relating to the work program for urgently scaling up mitigation ambition and implementation referred to in paragraph 27 of Decision 1 CMA 3. Agenda item number 8, matters relating to the global stocktake under the Paris Agreement. Agenda item number 9, second periodic review of the long-term global goal under the Convention and of overall progress towards achieving it. Agenda item number 10, Coronivia joint work on agriculture. Agenda item number 11, report of the Adaptation Committee. Under this item, the SPI and the SUBSTA will also consider the review of the progress, effectiveness and performance of the Adaptation Committee. Agenda item number 14, Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh Work Programme on the Global Goal on Adaptation referred to in Decision 7 CMA 3. Agenda item number 15, report of the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage associated with climate change impacts. Agenda item number 16, matters relating to the Santiago Network under the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage associated with climate change impacts. Agenda item 17A, development and transfer of technologies, joint annual report of the Technology Executive Committee and the Climate Technology Center and Network. Agenda item number 20, matters relating to the Forum on the impact of the implementation of response measures serving the Convention, the Kyoto Protocol, and the Paris Agreement. For these joint items, I invite the SPI to agree to the approach proposed and agreed under the SUBSTA. May I take it that the SPI agrees to this approach? I see a party asking for the floor, and Malta, you have the floor. Malta, do you want the floor? Or is this a technical glitch? I see no flags up, and I take it that it indeed was a technical glitch. And so I will ask again, may I take it that the SPI agrees to this approach? I hear no objections. It is so decided. Parties will recall that in the SUBSTA plenary, oral reports were heard from 5 constituted bodies relating to the joint SP items: the Adaptation Committee, the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, the Technology Executive Committee, and the Climate Technology Center and Network Advisory Board, and the Katowice Committee of Experts. The oral reports will be made available on the SUBSTA and the SPI sessional pages. I now invite parties to turn to agenda item number 2, organizational matters, sub-item 2C, election of officers other than the chair. In accordance with Rule 27 of the draft rules of procedures being applied, the SPI shall elect its vice chair and rapporteur for 2023. Consultations are ongoing on nominations. I propose to return to this item during the closing plenary on Saturday, 12th November. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to agenda item number 2, organizational matters, sub-item 2B, facilitative sharing of views under the international consultation and analysis process. The 13th workshop of the facilitative sharing of views, or FSV under the International Consultation and Analysis Process will convene on Friday 11th November and Saturday 12th November 2022. 11 parties will be going through the FSV process at this session, and that is Andorra, Armenia, Ghana, Jordan, Liberia, Morocco, North Macedonia, Paraguay, Togo, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for detailed information on the schedule of this workshop. I invite the SBI to take note of the information that I have just provided. I invite parties to turn to agenda item number 2, organizational matters, sub-item 2E, other mandated events. I would like to bring your attention to the following mandated events held in conjunction with this session. Pre-sessional workshop under the work program for urgently scaling up mitigation, ambition and implementation. Pre-sessional and fourth workshop under the Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh work program on the global goal on adaptation. Second meeting of the technical dialogue under the global stocktake. Seventh meeting of the KCI. Activity 4A of the Gender Action Plan SBI Substa special event to present relevant information from the IPCC 6th assessment report, and I invite the SBI to take note of the information I have just provided. I invite parties to turn to agenda item 3, reporting and review of parties included in the Annex 1 to the Convention. Sub-item 3A, status of submissions and review of national communications and biennial reports from parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Sub-item 3B, compilation and synthesis of biennial reports from parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. And sub-item 3C, reports on national greenhouse gas inventories data from parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Let me first mention that the compilation and synthesis of the fourth biennial reports from parties included in Annex 1 to the Convention has been updated. The updated report reflects recent submissions from 2 parties and resubmissions from other parties following the technical expert reviews. The updated report is available on the website of the UNCCC Secretariat. As indicated in my scenario note, and as discussed with interested parties during my pre-sessional consultations, I propose that the SBI agrees to defer its consideration for these 3 sub-items, sub-item 3A, 3B, and 3C, until its 58th session in 2023. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I now have United Arab Emirates. You have the floor.
Ukraine. Madam
Pardon.
Chair.
Pardon very much. It's a mistake on my screen, so I see the Emirates. It is Ukraine. Ukraine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, distinguished delegates. On SBI 57, agenda item 3, Ukraine welcomes the proposal by the Chair to defer the consideration of the agenda item to the next session. For over 8 years and last 8 months, Ukraine is fighting unprecedented full-scale war launched by terroristic state of Russia against Ukraine. This immoral war in the heart of Europe is the war against the Ukrainian nation, Ukrainian people, Ukrainian economy, and the very self of Ukrainian identity. This war already having irreversible consequences for Ukraine, for European continent, and the world. This war is undermining the integrity of the Convention and the Paris Agreement. Illegal temporary occupation of Ukrainian territories undermines the reliability of reporting data and all consequent UNFCCC reports. This threatens our work under enhanced transparency framework and global stocktake process. Ukraine reiterates its raising concerns over reliability of reporting data under UNFCCC and stresses the need to address the robustness of transparency of reporting as a matter of crucial importance. We will need to address it once the peace and territorial integrity of Ukraine is restored. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I now invite parties to turn to agenda item number 4, reporting from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Sub-item 4B, report of the consultative group of experts. The SPI will consider the progress report of the consultative group of experts on its work in 2022. Guinea, is this a point of order?
No, it's not a point of order. It is to make, on behalf of a CGE, the report to the SPI.
Thank you very much. I will just proceed a little bit and I will give you the floor. The SPI will consider the progress report of the consultative group of experts on its work in 2022. I would like to invite Alpha Kaluga, Chair of the consultative group of experts, to make a brief overview report to the SPI. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of a consultative group of experts, I have the honor to report to the SPI on its work. At the first meeting this year, based on the revised TOR, which was agreed in Glasgow last year, the CGE started its work. The CGE updated its vision, mission, and strategic objective to guide its work, keeping the long-term needs and priority of developing countries as they implement the existing MRV arrangement under the Convention and to prepare for transitioning to ETF under the Paris Agreement. The CGE is fully committed to assisting developing countries on their journey. The CGE recognizes that all developing countries are at different starting points, and they needed to be provided with technical support that enables them to meet the requirement as parties to the Paris Agreement. The CGE, with this view, developed its work plan, which is successfully implemented. This results in reaching 197 experts through its webinar on how climate transparency arrangement matters at national level, training for 51 national experts through regional hands-on training workshop on tracking progress on INDCs under the ETF, for the Asia Pacific and Eastern Europe region. Workshop for the African, Latin American, and Caribbean regions are planned in December. Continuing its work on building sustainable institutional arrangement by providing 2 new case studies and 3 interviews videos and 2 animation videos. Continuing the e-learning program on national communication. Continuing to offer the training program on the technical analysis of biennial update report to experts on the UNFCCC roster of experts. Undertaking targeted analytic work, such as compiling and summarizing problems, constraints, lessons learned, capacity building needs in relation to developing country parties reporting. Increasing awareness of CGE activities among stakeholders that are actively engaged in providing support to developing countries parties in the area of MFV and transparency through special event on the margin of the UN Climate Change Conference, regional climate weeks, as well as through its website and interactive online platform. In closing, the CGE looks forward to guidance from the SBI for the technical support it provides to developing countries to able to implement the ETF. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your statement, Alpha. I congratulate the consultative group of experts on its achievements made the past year. I propose to convene informal consultations on this sub-item to be co-facilitated by Sandra Motsuanedi from South Africa and Aaron Kirby from Australia. The outcome of their work will be presented to the SBI closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? I hear no objections, so it is decided. I thank the co-facilitators for accepting this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and CCTV for more information on the date, time, and location for the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 4, reporting from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention, Sub-Item 4C, provision of financial and technical support. I would like to invite a representative of JEF, Shizuru Aoki, to present a statement under this sub-item. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak on GF support for Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. Let me first report on the very successful outcome of the record replenishment of $5.33 billion for the GF8 period, which started on July 1st of 2022 and will run until 30th June of 2026. Accordingly, support for reporting and capacity building activities saw a significant increase of 33% for the GF8 period. Specifically, the set-aside resources for reporting activities increased to $145 million from $110 million. This figure includes support for the Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency, the CBIT, which increased from $75 million from $55 million. On national communications and biennial update reports, the BURs, countries continue to make good progress. During the reporting period, the GF approved 26 national communications, 3 BURs, and 38 biennial transparency reports, or the BTRs, for the total of $49 million. Cumulatively, the GF has supported 206 BURs in 132 countries for $86 million, and 521 national communications in 152 countries for $261 million. On BTRs, support has been made available since February of 2021 to provide sufficient lead time for countries to prepare and submit their first BTRs by December 2024. To date, the GF has supported for 49 BTRs for a total of $35 million in 48 countries. In addition to standalone national projects, the GF is supporting an umbrella program to provide support to up to 43 BTRs. Already, 25 countries have joined the umbrella program. For the GF8 period, we're pleased to report that the agreed full cost of BTR has increased. For a standalone BTR, parties can access up to $600,000. For a combined BTR and national communications, parties can access up to $633,000. Parties that are in the process of preparing another report can access top-up financing of $250,000 starting in January 23. Parties can access resources for multiple reports. Support is available from set-aside resources. The CBIT continues to be provided to countries upon request. To date, the GF has supported 88 projects totaling $145 million in a geographically balanced manner. Already, 74 projects, or 88% of the portfolio, are under implementation. This means that many parties are building and enhancing their capacity to meet the requirements of Article 13 of the Paris Agreement. Finally, we would like to reassure parties that the GEF will continue to provide resources as a priority for the timely preparation and submission of BTRs and national communications, as well as for the CBIT, and continue to respond to guidance. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for delivering this report, Ms. Aoki, which will be posted on the SBI website along with a longer version of your report. I would like to remind parties of the importance of constructive discussions to help advance the consideration of the provision of financial and technical support in a holistic way, in view of the need to begin implementation of the ETF. I also expect that parties will reach substantive agreement on this sub-item in a timely manner at this session. I propose to establish informal consultations on this sub-item to be co-facilitated by Tian Wang and Helen Plume. The outcomes of their work will be presented to the SBI in its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? I hear no objections. It is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for accepting this role, and I invite parties to refer to their daily program and the CCTV for more information on the date, time and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. Colleagues, before turning to the next item, let me take a moment to mention that this is Helen Plume's last COP. Dear Helen, you have been a mentor for many over the years, including myself, and I thank you for sharing good advice and your wisdom. You have also been a role model for women leadership, much needed in the UNCCC process. But first and foremost, your legacy is imprinted in the many decisions that have come forward under your able guidance, including those made when you served as Substa chair. Your dedication has brought international climate regime forward, and we thank you for that. Helen, it has been a great honor to work with you, and I look forward to working with you at this session. And I am joined by all in thanking you and wishing you all the best for a wonderful retirement when that time arrives. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 4, reporting from parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. Sub-Item 4D, summary reports on the technical analysis of annual update reports of parties not included in Annex 1 to the Convention. I would like to propose that the SBI takes note of the summary report finalized in the period up to 24th August 2022 and published on the UNCCC website. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item Number 5, matters relating to the Clean Development Mechanism Registry referred to in Para 75B of the Annex to the Decision 3 CMA 3. Colleagues, please recall that, as requested at our last session, the Secretariat prepared and published a technical paper with the symbol KP-CDM-TP1. The SBI may wish to consider the input in developing recommendations for consideration and adoption by the CMP. To conduct the work on this item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be co-facilitated by Kate Hancock and Sonam Tashi. The outcome of their work will be presented to the SBI in its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for taking on the role. I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for more information on the date, time and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 6, Report of the Administrator of the International Transaction Log under the Kyoto Protocol. I propose that the SBI recommends that the CMP takes note of the information presented in the 2022 report as contained in document F-CCCC KP CMP 2022-5. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? I hear no objections. It is so decided. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 12, Matters relating to the least developed countries. The LEG held its 42nd meeting back-to-back with the most recent NAP Expo in Botswana last August. I would like to invite Kenel Delushka from Haiti, the chair of the LEG, to briefly report on the group's activities. Mr. Delushka, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor to report on the work of the LEG to the SBI. 2022 has been a very productive year, whereby the group embarked on a number of activities to deepen support to the least developed countries, particularly on adaptation. Firstly, we launched the NAP writing support to help the LDCs to move toward successful adaptation by helping each to initiate and submit project proposal to the GCF and other sources of funding for implementing adaptation priorities associated with their NAPs. This is done in collaboration with the GCF Secretariat and with the support of the NAP Technical Working Group. It is a direct response to LDC's needs. Secondly, we successfully organized the 7th Global NAP Expo in August in Gaborone, Botswana. The event brought together over 4,000 participants, nearly half of which were women. It features key topics from science to practice and enable interaction of the LDCs with the GCF, GEF, AF, and other stakeholders to address their needs. The LEG is thankful to the government of Botswana for hosting this year's event. We will soon publish highlights from the event. Third, we launched the roster of experts from the LDCs to serve as a resource to support the formulation and implementation of NAPs. The roster now has 20 LDC experts and is growing. Fourth, we are preparing the technical guidelines for the implementation of NAPs through the NAP Technical Working Group. The guideline will help the LDCs on how to implement their NAP effectively and efficiently. They will also help in the design and delivery of support to the LDCs, thereby contributing towards addressing the many gaps and needs of the LDCs in NAPs. Madam Chair, there are many more activities and deliverables. The draft rules of procedure of the LEG, as mandated by COP26, are available in the Leg 42 report. We have been working on mandates from the CMA on adaptation-related parts of the Paris Agreement. More details are contained in the Leg 42 report. In ending my report, I would like to invite everyone to 3 key events we are running at this session. First one, a high-level event on advancing adaptation in the LDCs, taking place tomorrow, 7 November at 4 p.m. as part of the Leaders Summit, which will also feature 20 years of LEG support to the LDCs. We also have the LEG side event and a technical meeting on NAPS, both taking place on 11 November 2022. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that statement, Mr. Deluska. I thank the LEG for their work and congratulate them for their achievements this year. The report just made will be made available on the SBI webpage. To conduct work on this item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be co-facilitated by Bob Natifu from Uganda and Jens Fugl from Denmark. The outcome of their work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for taking on the role. I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 13, National Adaptation Plans. To conduct work on this important agenda item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be co-facilitated by Perpetua Latassi from Tuvalu and Jens Fugl from Denmark. The outcome of their work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for taking on this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on the date, time, location for the first informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 17, Development and Transfer of Technologies and Implementation of the Technology Mechanism. Sub-item 17B, Linkages between the technology mechanism and the financial mechanism of the Convention. To conduct work on this sub-item, I propose to establish an informal consultation to be co-facilitated by Orly Jacob from Canada and Maya Swaraze from Georgia. The outcome of the work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for taking on this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 17, Development and Transfer of Technologies, Sub-Item 17C, First Periodic Assessment referred in paragraph 69 of the Decision 1 CP21. To conduct the work on this sub-item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be co-facilitated by Voshita Vijay Nanaka from Sri Lanka and Elfried Moore from Austria. The outcome of the work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? I hear no objections. It is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for accepting this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultation. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 17, Development and Transfer of Technologies, Sub-Item 17D, Poznan Strategic Program on Technology Transfer. To conduct the work on this sub-item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be co-facilitated by Voshita Vijay Nanaka from Sri Lanka and Stephen Minas from Greece. The outcome of the work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? I hear no objections. It is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for taking on this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 18, Matters Relating to the Adaptation Fund. Sub-Item 18A, Membership of the Adaptation Fund Board. As discussed with interested parties during my pre-sessional consultation, I propose that the SBI agrees to continue its consideration of this sub-item at its next session. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 18, Matters Related to the Adaptation Fund, Sub-Item 18B, Fourth Review of the Adaptation Fund. Please note that the technical paper on the fourth review of the Adaptation Fund is available on the SBI 57 session webpage for consideration by parties. To conduct work on this sub-item, I propose to establish an informal consultations to be co-facilitated by Eva Schruders from Netherlands and Diane Blacklane from Antigua Barbuda. The outcome of their work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for accepting the role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 19, Matters Related to Capacity Building. I would like to invite the co-chair of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, Yang Chang from China, to make a brief oral report to the SBI on behalf of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building. Madam, you have the floor. Can somebody please give the floor to China?
Thank you, Madam Chair, distinguished delegates. On behalf of the PCCB, I'm pleased to report to you on the work and achievements of the PCCB in our last reporting period of September 2021 to July 2022 under the three priority areas in our work plan for 2021 to 2024. Under priority area A, enhancing coherence and coordination of capacity building under the Convention. We inter alia effectively facilitated the informal coordination group for capacity building under the Convention and the Paris Agreement. In short, we call it ICG. The ICG provides a conducive space for representatives of constituent bodies, operating entities, and the relevant process under the Convention and the Paris Agreement to coordinate climate change-related capacity building plans and activities and allow for better sharing of information and coherence and identification of opportunities. The ICG successfully met twice in the reporting period, and the PCCB regularly updated and published a comprehensive overview of forthcoming capacity building activities of constituent bodies, process, and operating entities in the ICG to facilitate coordination and inform the public. Furthermore, serving the Paris Agreement, the PCCB prepared a synthesis report on matters related to capacity building for the technical assessment components of the first global stocktake under the Paris Agreement. Under the priority area B, identifying capacity gaps and needs, both current and emerging, and recommending ways to address them. The PCCB launched a toolkit to assess capacity gaps and needs to implement the Paris Agreement. We also continued to co-host with the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights our free online training and introduction to climate change and human rights, which has been successfully completed by more than 3,000 people so far. Furthermore, the PCCB developed a technique paper on enhancing the ownership of developing countries of building and maintaining capacity for climate action, which we are pleased to launch on Wednesday, 9th November at the 4th Capacity Building Hub here at COP27. Under the priority area C, promoting awareness arising, knowledge and information sharing, and stakeholder engagement with bodies and relative actors under and outside the Convention. The PCCB inter alia organized the week-long 3 Capacity Building Hub at the COP26 in Glasgow, and has been prepared for the 4th Capacity Building Hub that runs from 9th to 16 November here at COP27 with our 50 capacity building focused events. We warmly welcome all interested stakeholders to join the events at our hub. We also complete our regional events series Youth in Capacity Building at the UNFCCC Regional Climate Weeks in the MENA region in 2022, and launched a new regional event series at the 2022 Regional Climate Weeks in the Latin American and the Caribbean regions, focused on building capacity for the horizontal and vertical integrated of NDCs. The PCCB continued to facilitate the work of our PCCB network, launched in 2020 as a voluntary association of capacity building stakeholders, which has since grown and over 300 members. Across our work plan, we continued to implement our gender mainstreaming standards to integrate other cross-cutting issues such as indigenous people knowledge, human rights, youth, and elements of actions for climate empowerment. Finally, in response to a request from COP25 to report on progress, outcomes, impacts, and effectiveness of the activities in our work plan, we have developed a monitoring and evaluation framework and applied it for the first time in our annual technique process report in 2022. Madam, distinguished delegates, Please allow me to express my sincere gratitude to my fellow co-chair and all members of the PCCB and to our party and non-party observers and stakeholders for their valuable contribution to the work of the PCCB during the past year. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement, and I congratulate the Paris Committee on Capacity Building on its achievements made in the past year. To conduct work on this item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be co-chaired by Juan Carlos Monterrey Gomez from Panama and Roberta Ena from Italy. The outcome of their work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for taking on this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 21, Gender and Climate Change. You may recall that the COP has referred the consideration of the annual report on gender composition and the synthesis report on progress in integrating a gender perspective in constituted bodies processes to the SBI. The matter will be considered under this item. Parties will also continue their consideration of the review of the implementation of activities under the Gender Action Plan. To conduct work on this item, I propose to establish informal consultations co-facilitated by Salka Seguradottir from United Kingdom and Juan Carlos Monterrey Gomez from Panama. The outcome of the work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for accepting this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for more information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I now invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 22, Matters Relating to Action for Climate Empowerment. To conduct the work on this item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be facilitated by Pemi Gazela from South Africa for the time being until we find a second co-facilitator. The outcome of the work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank Ms. Gazela for accepting this role. I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for more information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 23, Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters. I would like to request the Deputy Executive Secretary, Mr. Owais Sarman, to introduce the item. Owais, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'll be very brief. Under this agenda item 23, Administrative, Financial and Institutional Matters, the SBI is expected to consider the information contained in relevant documents made available on UNFCCC website, including, first, the status of contributions as at 21st October 2022, second, the financial report and audited financial statements for the year 2021 and the report of the United Nations Board of Auditors. Third, comments by the Secretariat on the report of the Board of Auditors, and finally, an update on the work program for the Secretariat for biennium 22-23 as at July 2022. Now, specifically, the status of contributions as of 21 October 2022, the Secretariat prepared a document containing information on the status of contributions to UNFCCC trust funds as at 21 October 2022. The total indicative contributions to be provided by the parties for 2022 as per Decision 22/CP26 amounted to 30.7 million euros. As at October 2022, the outstanding contributions for 2022 amounted to 8.8 million euros, and 138 parties had not made contributions, full contributions for the year 2022. The outstanding contributions for the period prior years of 2010 to 21 were 5.3 million euros. With regard to supplementary contributions to the Trust Fund for supplementary activities, the Trust Fund for participation amounted to 14.9 million and 1.7 million for participation, respectively. Specifically on the financial report and audited financial statements for the year 2021 and the report of United Nations Board of Auditors, the UNFCCC financial procedures require that audited statements of accounts should be provided to the Conference of Parties as soon as possible after the accounts for the financial period have been closed. The SBI is invited to take note of the information contained in the audited financial statements and the report of 2021 of the Board of Auditors, including the recommendations relating to financial audit of UNFCCC. The Secretariat's comments on the report by the auditors include detailed responses to new and ongoing audit recommendations and information on actions taken to date by the Secretariat. Finally, regarding the update on the work program of the Secretariat for the biennium 22-23, as at 1st July 2022, the Secretariat has provided parties with an update on the work program for the biennium, reflecting the adjustments arising from conclusions of the 56 sessions of the subsidiary bodies. On behalf of UNFCCC Secretariat, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude, and on that of the whole Secretariat, to the German Federal Court of Audit for the very fruitful cooperation over the past 3 years, 2016 to 2022, following their mandate as lead auditors of UNFCCC's Secretariat, and that'll soon come to an end. We'd like to express our most sincere thanks to the auditors for the very constructive and productive work that they conducted, and at the same time, I would like to warmly welcome the incoming external auditors from the French Cour des Comptes. Bienvenue. The UNFCCC Secretariat is looking forward to working with the French Court of Auditors. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Owais. For the consideration of this item, I propose to establish a contact group to be chaired by Janine Felsen from Belize. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank Ms. Felsen for accepting this role. I invite parties to refer to the daily program on the CCTV for more information on the date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. I invite parties to turn to Agenda Item 24, Reporting and Review pursuant to Article 13 of the Paris Agreement, provision of financial and technical support to developing country parties for reporting and capacity building. To conduct the work on this sub-item, I propose to establish informal consultations to be co-facilitated by Tian Wang from China and Helen Plune from New Zealand. The outcome of their work will be presented to the SBI at its closing plenary. May I take it that the SBI agrees to this approach? Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I thank the co-facilitators for accepting this role, and I invite parties to refer to the daily program and the CCTV for information on date, time, and location of the first meeting of the informal consultations. Please turn to agenda item 25, other matters. Are there any other issues that parties may want to raise? I see no requests for the floor. Dear colleagues, we have launched work on all items. I look forward to receiving significant outcomes at the closing plenary on Saturday, 12th November, and I assure you of my support in the coming days. You may want to stay in the room as we prepare the podium for the joint plenary, which will start at 6:30 p.m. I now adjourn the first meeting of the SBI.